Hello, my name's Bev and I'm the author of the book Please Eat, A Mother's Struggle to Free Her Teenage Son from Anorexia, which describes our family's battle with the deadly eating disorder, anorexia nervosa, which my teenage son Ben developed back in 2009 when he was just 15 years old. I'm about to read two posts from February 2011, which was 12 months after my son Ben began his treatment for his eating disorder with CAMS. And these two posts are just updating readers on the progress or lack of progress that was taking place during February 2011. This first post is called Update following the weigh-in on Friday. As you may have gathered, last week was a tricky week following the 1.9 kilo weight gain the week before. Ben had found it difficult to come to terms with this, and it sparked off all manner of anxiety-related issues throughout the week. However, the good news is that despite this, he continued to cooperate and eat in the way he should. He admits that the anorexia voice was telling him to cut back most of the time, but he refused to listen to it, insisting on ploughing on. I am so proud of him. He was really tetchy by Friday, worrying that the scales would show a similar massive weight gain. However, he's actually lost weight despite the week's eating. Almost immediately he relaxed and his mood improved. In the past, this would have been because he was relieved at losing weight rather than gaining it. Now the relief was because he proved to himself that he could eat as required without putting on a massive amount of weight in one go. Also, that the 1.9 kilo weight gain could just be an anomaly, which hopefully he can live with. This week we have agreed to increase intake slightly to see what happens on Friday. So far he seems to be managing this and is already challenging himself to eat things that would have freaked him out in the past. But it remains to be seen what his weight will be at the end of the week. The aim is to maintain a gradual weight increase of the recommended 0.5 kilo average per week. At the moment, he's only managing an average of half of this, and that includes the 1.9 kilo increase the other week. So we're at the tricky stage of winning him over to the idea that increasing massively some weeks and less on others, or not at all, can average out at less than the recommended desired average. At the moment, he's finding it hard to see the bigger picture, although he is trying, and I believe given time he will see it. It is a slow process, but we are moving in the right direction. Is this the same for all recovering anorexia sufferers? Not necessarily. What works for some people may not work for others. Ben is the kind of person who needs to prove things to himself before he believes them, like seeing the results of a scientific experiment, and this is the kind of approach which seems to work for him and may indeed work for others. Before the anorexia, our logic would have seemed obvious and he wouldn't have needed proof that we are right. But anorexia is a notoriously irrational condition when the sufferer loses much of the logic they had when they were normal, in inverted commas. And it's as if the brain has to be reprogrammed to get it back to a normal way of thinking. The next post is from the 21st of February and it's called Calorie Crisis. Is this another turning point, I wonder? Not everyone advocates calorie counting as a means for the anorexia sufferer to gain weight, but for Ben, calorie counting was the only way to get him to eat enough food, especially as he prepares his own breakfasts and lunches these days. However, calorie counting definitely plays into the anorexia's hands in that it's a very controlling thing and puts the person in a completely artificial environment. So yesterday, Ben announced out of the blue that he'd had enough of counting calories. At first, alarm bells went off as I worried it might result in him eating less and as a result losing weight, which he can't afford to do. Also, I wasn't entirely sure that he was at the right stage to do this yet. But on the other hand, it could prove to be another positive turning point. So after some discussion, we decided to give it a try until Thursday, when he goes for his next CAMS weighing session. I think he just feels so imprisoned by the anorexia and is longing to break free. As he said last night, I just want a holiday from it all, and the last time I had a real holiday was in spring 2009, before all this kicked in. That's the end of those 2 posts. As I've mentioned before, the problem with our treatment for Ben's eating disorder with CAMS was that they only saw him for 60 minutes a week, and obviously it was me with him for the rest of the week. Right at the start, I was given an eating plan, which they said was a typical eating plan that they used for eating disorder sufferers, but I was never given any help with implementing this eating plan, and the items on it were impossible, the sort of thing that never in a million years would Ben have eaten. And although at the start of the eating disorder treatment I was told that they didn't do calories, they did portion sizes, and they showed me what a typical portion size should be. The problem was because Ben restricted what he would eat to mainly salad and vegetables and the odd few carbohydrates. He could have had a massive plateful, portion size that is, of food, and yet the calorie content would be next to nothing. So that is why I decided that the only option for us was to count calories, because I was desperate for him to recover. Obviously, I wasn't going to sit by and just let him deteriorate. As I've said before, at the end of 2010, Ben's weight was at its lowest point, even though he'd been in treatment since the February. So I was desperate for him to put on weight. I didn't want to see him lose any more weight. I'm so fortunate to have discovered the Around the Dinner Table forum about the time that Ben began his eating disorder treatment, a year before these blog entries, because talking to the other parents and learning about evidence-based treatments for eating disorders across the globe was really empowering, and I got to find out what worked and what didn't. Obviously, everyone's child is different, but on the whole, the evidence-based treatments which were coming in from the United States were showing an excellent success rate, and I was desperate for Ben to receive this treatment because, to be honest, I was desperate to try anything. But unfortunately, these evidence-based treatments hadn't yet reached the UK, or at least were just starting to reach the UK. So in a way, I think that we were being treated with older treatment models, and I tend to think this is why his recovery took much longer. But again, I can't judge this because everyone's situation is different, and I can't say what would have happened if he had received the latest evidence-based treatment, because he didn't, so I can't compare it. I'm not saying this to criticise CAMS really, because they were a really nice team, but I did feel that I was banging my head against a brick wall a lot of the time, because my instinct just said, no, don't do this, or I need such and such a help, but it wasn't there, it wasn't forthcoming. And I really hope that things have changed by now. I mean, 2011 was 11 years ago, and I'd like to think that things have moved forward a lot since then in the treatment of eating disorders in the UK. So anyway, thank you for listening. You'll find a link below to my blog, and you'll also find a link to my website where you can download free PDFs of my blog, and also a link to Amazon where you can buy a copy of my book.